Hello and welcome to the Checking the Gate podcast. This is Doug.
And this is Mason.
How are you today, Mason?
I'm okay.
Today we are going to be talking about a film that I'd say is one of the more controversial films of the season.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just get down right to it. Let's talk about Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice.
Oh.
He has the power to wipe out the entire human race. If we believe there's even a 1% chance that he is our enemy, we have to take it as an absolute certainty.
The greatest gladiator match in the history of the world. God versus man. Day versus night.
You're psychotic.
That is a 3-syllable word for any thought too big for little minds.
I've known a few women like you.
Oh, I don't think you've ever known a woman like me.
You know the oldest lie in America? It's that power can be innocent.
I think we need to talk about the big issue here, and that where did the S go in verses? Like VS dot used to be how you would shorten verses, and now suddenly it's just the letter V. Like what is going on? Are we that lazy a society that we decide to ditch a whole letter from an abbreviation?
No, I think it's been like even a more shortened shorthand for quite a while now.
Well, not in my books. But then again, I'm not the one writing comic fiction here, so what do I know?
Technically, it's not comic fiction; it's cinematic fiction, which you are writing.
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I
guess.
No,
it's kind of all column A.
Well, I think that. Anyway.
That's neither here nor there.
I think that was the big issue I wanted to tackle today. So we can probably call the podcast off now.
Well,
thanks so much for listening to the Checking the Gate podcast.
Nope.
No. Okay.
And besides that, while we're talking about the evolution of language, the thing that makes something an official use of piece of language is widespread use. Like, that's how words get added to the dictionary. That's how we got swag and muggle added to the Oxford Dictionary.
I don't think muggle should be in there.
But
swag I can kind of understand. Muggle is...
But the point here is that as a user of the language, you don't get to sit up on high and say, oh no, this isn't proper use, like it should be like this. Like, no, what defines the language is how it's used widely. So if enough people use it a certain way and say something to mean a specific thing, then it gets adopted officially. That's how it works.
Well, let's get to a brief plot synopsis.
Poor Peter Parker was pitiful. He couldn't have been any shyer.
If you say that joke one more time, I'm going to eject you from the main list of co-hosts.
When you look at superhero movies and you break them down...
No, you've already said it. You've already said it. I don't want to hear it anymore. Anyway, so...
It's funny. Let's have a vote. www.masonisfunnydammit.com.
If that website's out there, feel free to visit it, folks.
It's not a real website yet.
Metropolis was leveled by Superman.
Fighting Zod. And there are some repercussions in that. Bruce Wayne, he's kind of ticked off about it. Bruce Wayne, secretly, is Batman. Really?
Yeah, that's one of the big reveals of the film.
Oh my god, it's like nobody ever knew.
And he's brooding up inside, trying to figure out, like, hey, should anyone have this much power? I don't think so. You know who else is thinking that? Lex Luthor. A long-haired hippie version of Lex Luthor is finding a way to tear the god of Superman down from his throne. Well, Superman, he's just trying to be a nice guy. He's just trying to, like, save the day and stuff, like Superman does. Meanwhile... There's kryptonite now.
Yeah.
And meanwhile...
apparently Lois and Lois and Clark are a thing.
Yeah, they're full out dating now. There's some lady following around Bruce Wayne, trying to dig up some information from Lex Luthor involving a bunch of other people have superpowers, and then...
Okay, so this movie is a complete mess, even when it comes to the plot synopsis. So let's break it down into its main points. So the main plot is about Batman wanting to stop Superman because he perceives him to be a threat, as the United States government and Lex Luthor also do. Lex Luthor and Batman go their own separate ways and try to find the means in which to stop Superman. As Batman is trying to track down what he needs in order to take Superman on, he tries to infiltrate Lex Luthor's research and everything, and dig up everything he can. As that's happening, he meets Diana Prince, was looking for something that Lex had of hers, or that was of her rather. And Superman is just kind of like, I'm Superman, what's the big deal, dudes? And that's kind of the main plot of the movie. We also get to see what will eventually be members of the Justice League.
Who cares about all that stuff?
It's called Dawn of Justice.
Well, yeah, but should it be? Anyway.
Exactly.
What's more interesting to me is sort of like what this film was, I think, trying to be. And I think that...
it was trying to be the Avengers, and it failed.
Well, okay. What makes this film so controversial, I think, is the fact that the critics, first of all, are ripping it to shreds.
Because they should be. It's bad.
The fans seem very divided. Now, here's the interesting thing. Mm-hmm. I have heard some people just, again, rip it to shreds. Mm-hmm. Another thing is there's some people who really genuinely liked it. Mm-hmm. And there's some people who, and I think this goes for myself as well as for where I sit, are like, actually, it's not that bad. It's not. It's obviously not great. But is it the complete disaster that the critics and some fans were saying it is?
It's the Room of the superhero genre.
Okay, so I guess let's get into opinions then, since we're getting into opinions. So Mason, it seems you didn't like it. What about this film did not work for you?
DC is trying to reverse engineer the Avengers, I think. I mean, that much is clear. If Marvel went from Iron Man 1 to the Avengers...
Yes, and this is a point I can definitely agree on, is that Marvel was so smart and so ahead of the game in that they carefully set up a bunch of characters. They gave them, like, all solo movies. There's Iron Man, Incredible Hulk, Captain America, Thor, and I even think they got Iron Man 2 out before the Avengers. So there's 5 movies to set up these characters. They even hit it out of the park with characters that I wouldn't have thought that they did. Like Thor, I didn't care about Thor. I watched the Thor movie, and I kind of cared about Thor. I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. Yeah. Captain America, didn't really like Captain America. Now he's one of my favorite characters in the MCU.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Iron Man, like let's face it, Robert Downey Jr. sold Iron Man to millions of people.
Iron Man's the bomb.
And
Iron Man probably has bombs, but
that took a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of talent to make those films work to lead up to the Avengers in 2012.
Yes.
DC's like, holy crap, what are we gonna do? We just put out this Green Lantern film. It sucks. Yeah. What were we thinking?
Oh God.
We've got to catch up to these guys.
Yeah.
So they put out Man of Steel, which was mixed reactions. And, again, I was sort of in the ballpark of, okay, actually, Man of Steel is not bad. It's probably the first Superman movie that I could really be on board with to any extent. Because, now, this is a controversial opinion. I don't like the old Superman movies. I have my reasons for that. I haven't watched them in a long time, to be fair. Yeah. But they're just... not my generation, a little too goofy.
The best received, critically, the best received superhero movies ever.
Well, I'll give them that they were so ahead of their time. Like, you could really believe that, at the time that Superman was a real character. And we're not reviewing those films. I would love to watch them again and actually formulate a new opinion on them because it has been a long time.
And we should add that to the list, so go on.
There's a lot of things on the list.
There are so many things on the list, like Broadway Melody.
We got things to talk about.
Right.
Very limited time.
Yes.
So finally I was kind of on board with the modern-day Superman film with Man of Steel. Had issues with it, but I was more on board than, say, I was with Superman Return. The only successful films DC kind of had behind their belt, for sure, were the Dark Knight films, which was already established that they wouldn't have any connection to the DC universe, because it would kind of conflict with that, as the Nolan films, the Christopher Nolan's trilogy, were supposed to be based kind of like in reality. The whole idea was to make Batman a legitimate thing that could happen in reality. Whether or not it is the case, or like, I think that he hit it out of the park for the most part.
Oh, yeah.
I have a few issues with Dark Knight Rises, but all in all, like a really great trilogy in cinema.
Yeah.
But that isn't compatible with what the Justice League needs to be.
No.
So it makes sense that they have to kind of like shelve that aside. Okay, we have this trilogy. We can't do anything with it.
Yeah.
We have this crappy Green Lantern movie. We can't do anything with it. We have Man of Steel. We're going to have to build off just that.
Yeah.
And then they decide, well, instead of playing our cards very carefully and very wisely like Marvel did, they just have this hand that they're just going to put down and be like, okay, we're trying this.
Yeah.
And then we get a lot of stories in a lot of movie. I mean, it's like 2.5 hours.
It is. It's so long.
But it's not long enough for all those stories.
No.
So, what we kind of get is a strange mess of good and bad. Okay, so let's continue with, I guess, the thought of what else didn't work for you.
Oh, God. So many different things. So it was three distinct movies. The first one would have been focused on Superman and the discovery of kryptonite, the fallout from Man of Steel, and introduction of Lex Luthor as antagonist and major threat in his life. You know, somehow he knows that Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent are superheroes. Like, how?
So there's basically just some plot holes and some unanswered questions.
Yeah. So, you know, there should have been like a Superman movie to introduce all of those elements and, you know, build that up.
Although, to be fair, it shouldn't take a genius to figure out that Clark Kent is Superman.
Well, no, but, you know, comic book logic, you know, you gotta go with that. I mean,
yes and no. Thing is, what I liked about Man of Steel was that it didn't have to be like Lois Lane going like, who's Superman? And it's a good thing I got my buddy Clark here. Because it established that she knew Superman first, then she met Clark Kent, and she already knew. And I'm like, oh, thank God they didn't have that stupid issue of Lois Lane not knowing who Clark Kent was, because it was so... That's one of the things I hate about Superman. It was so improbable that she just has no idea, because she's supposed to be this ace reporter.
But, you know, like, that's evident in every kind of sci-fi fantasy thing. Like, Prince Adam and He-Man... exact same hair color, exact same body type.
Yeah, that's stupid too. They look the exact same.
Yeah.
I don't buy that either.
Yeah.
You're trying to say like, well, it's like just like this stupid thing. I'm like, yeah, they're both stupid.
Yeah. Like the point is though, like there needs to be a suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, but you know what? He-Man's stupid. So just putting that out there. If you name a single good He-Man property, I will give you a gold star. Anyway, never mind.
The remade cartoon series from like circa 2013 or so?
I didn't see it, so I can neither confirm nor deny that.
Check it out.
Okay.
It actually had a plot this time.
Ooh!
I know. Anyway, back to my point.
Yes.
That would have been the first movie that Batman vs. Superman should have been. The next one would have been about Batman, establishing him as a character, how he's like world-weary and been doing the superhero thing for a while and just tired. And seeing
No, I'm not asking what we want this to be. I'm just asking what didn't work for you.
Oh, well,
in the film.
This is what I'm saying. Like, it should have been 3 movies, and these are what they should have been.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, like, just establish that and, like, set him up as a potential antagonist, you know, just every now and then in the background, like, who's the Superman guy? Like, somebody needs to stop him. The third movie would have been Batman actually going against Superman after we've established them as characters and introduced all these things we needed to see. And then, you know, sure, you can toss in this parts about the Justice League because then the movie isn't crowded.
Yeah, I think that could have worked. I also feel like they could have, spoiler alert, I mean, okay, let's just face it, if you're listening to this, you've probably seen the movie, or you should see the movie before you listen.
This is your spoiler warning,
yeah.
So if you haven't seen it, stop, watch it, come back.
I think if they spread it out differently, they could have done Wonder Woman in this one. They could have introduced her here. As the film is, as it is just a sequel to Man of Steel, sort of. I think it would have been better to not introduce Wonder Woman. I think it would have been cool to introduce Diana Prince, to introduce her like they have, but not actually introduce her as Wonder Woman. I think it would have been cool to have a little bit of a tease. And then maybe in the next movie, then it's like, oh no, she's a character.
Yeah.
Who actually has deep significance in this Justice League formation. They could have just ditched all the like video footage of the Justice League characters and just save that for another time. Yeah, if they spaced things out differently, they could have played around with what they had, but they didn't. So how do we feel about the actors in their particular roles?
The cast was good. Like, I liked them all. Everybody's been complaining about Jesse Eisenberg's take on Lex Luthor.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing the most.
Yeah, I really liked it.
I didn't have a problem with it either. Again, I'm not really attached to Lex Luthor as a character as much as a lot of people are, just because I'm not huge into Superman. But I don't mind him being sort of this crazy, unhinged blogger genius kid.
Yeah,
like he's not a blogger, but he could be a blogger.
but yeah, like doing Lex Luthor that way could have been a really great opportunity to comment on the ridiculousness of money buying power and how it's open to anybody who has it, even if you're off your rocker. What I didn't like about his Lex Luthor is how he became bald.
Oh, yeah. So not through natural hair loss.
No.
But through his prison sentence.
Yeah. In like the comic books and the Smallville series, what caused his baldness was the initial meteor strike that brought Superman's baby spaceship to Earth. There was like a meteor shower of kryptonite rocks and stuff. That's how kryptonite got on Earth. And that's how it happened. He was exposed, lost his hair, never grew back.
Now, you've had such a negative reaction. Now, when we first left the theater, you seemed a little bit ho-hum, and now it seems to have transformed into you calling it the room of superhero movies, which I feel like, may I just say that feels a little harsh. Because, you've seen The Room.
Well, no, I've heard things. Wait, no, I did, because you were showing it in one of your B-movie nights.
I don't think you're paying much attention, but anyway.
No, but anyway.
You until you experience The Room, you can't compare things to The Room.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. It did a few things decently. I'm not going to say well or good, but it did a few things decently. Like, it tried to take good things and put them all together. It's like the, now Kiss of movies. Like, you can't push two people or two things together and make them work. Like, it doesn't work like that.
I mean, I definitely think that there's worse examples of superhero movies. I think we're a little spoiled this day and age. We've gotten very used to a certain standard of quality. Thanks to Marvel and the standard that they set, as well as Christopher Nolan's trilogy. I think that between those groups, as well as Spock stepping up their game with X-Men recently as well.
Yeah.
I do feel like we are in an age when we were finally getting those really good superhero flicks.
But then again, a fair number of the original Superman movies, the Richard Donner, Christopher Reeve ones, were really good.
I think people can agree the first two.
Yeah.
I think that the Tim Burton Batman movies are pretty decent too. But I think that... I don't know if you've watched the Superman movies or the Tim Burton movies recently. I think that you might be surprised at how they haven't aged as well as you think they have. I can mostly only speak for the Tim Burton movies because I did rewatch those. And they're not, like, I'm not going to blame them. They're not bad. I think they were really cool stylistically and, and there's a lot of pros to them. I don't think we need to, like, hold them as a gold standard at this point in time. I think that standard has been changed. Let's talk about what did work in this film for us.
Okay. What I liked, I thought that Doomsday was done very well.
Really? Oh, that's interesting. I kind of feel he was a bit shoehorned in.
Well, he was shoehorned in, but it was good.
For an end boss, essentially. Yeah. For, like... the end boss of the dungeon, he was done decently well. But I do feel like, again, that could have had more building up to it, more understanding of what the significance of that was. But and also, like, once you see Doomsday, you kind of know what's coming after that. Like, Doomsday is sort of synonymous with the death of Superman.
Yeah, like Doomsday was the creature that came and killed Superman.
One of the most noteworthy
arcs
of the 90s.
Oh yeah.
Like one of the biggest events in comic history, I would say.
Oh yeah.
Because it looked like for a long time that Superman was dead.
Then he's
not. He's not dead.
No. They brought him back.
Yeah, because no one ever dies in comics.
Oh, God.
No one ever dies for good.
Except Uncle Ben and... Oh, no, not even Gwen Stacy now.
Oh, I think Gwen Stacy, she stayed dead, didn't she?
No. Now there's an alternate reality version of her in the mainstream Marvel comics.
Wow.
And she is now Spider-Gwen. So that's a thing.
Well,
yeah.
Spider-Gwen, that's really not a good... That's not a good hero name, like if you're trying to keep your secret identity secret.
Yeah.
But you know what? We all make mistakes. And once you're attached to a name, it's a brand. And you just gotta live with the repercussions of that brand.
What else worked for me? For the most part, I liked Batman.
Yeah. I think that he was one of the strongest aspects of the film. I think they purposely didn't make it an origin story. They purposely went with this sort of dark and grittier Batman. Sort of this really old, jaded Batman.
Yeah, and, I like that. I like that he's been out there for a while. He's, world-weary. He's tired. He's frustrated. You can tell that he wants to stop, but he just can't. He's just so tortured by all the tragedy and, the things that he's seen. Remember the part with the Robin suit with the, ha-ha jokes on you?
Yeah.
So that is actually supposed to be Tim Drake's Robin costume.
Jason Todd.
Jason Todd. Yeah, that's the one. That was alluding to the Joker killing Jason Todd.
That's another big event in comic history of the Jason Todd Robin being killed. Now he legitimately was killed, wasn't he? Did he stay dead?
I think they might have brought him back. I really can't remember. They bring so many people back.
But it's good to say that for a long time, Jason Todd, that Robin, was murdered by the Joker.
The Joker brutally murdered him.
So there you go, folks. There you go. That's the dark history of this Batman. Although I don't know if... Now, this does lead into an issue I have with the film on the negative side, is that I feel like there's too many inside things. Because... Yeah. I do know about the Jason Todd thing, but as a person who doesn't really read DC Comics and doesn't really have that background, it seems like you know way more about it than I do. There's a lot of references that I just didn't get, and I think that there's too much of that in this film. Again, Marvel films, they try to build on what is established in the cinematic universe. Where here they seems like they're just trying to build on the lore of the comics.
Yeah.
And... that's not necessarily bad lore, but you have to establish it for the mainstream audience because not everyone's going to be hip to the jive. We're not all on board. We don't all understand. And the thing is, I feel like I'm more educated than a lot of moviegoers as well on this kind of thing. So the fact that I didn't get a lot of these references, again, I didn't understand Cyborg.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is that box? Because I don't know. Because I just don't know anything about Cyborg.
Yeah, that is a completely fair point. I completely agree with you on that. There is a lot of wink and a nod to the fans of the comic books. It feels like it's definitely written for them. I think one amazing thing that Marvel has done is their cinematic universe is interconnected. So every television show being produced by them and every movie being produced by them, it's all in the same universe. You turn on Netflix, you watch Daredevil or Jessica Jones, you get references to the movies all the time.
Yeah, as well as
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Those are more interconnected than the Daredevil show. Although Daredevil and Jessica Jones, I think, are actually pretty well connected.
Oh yeah, well they're both set in Hell's Kitchen, so they reference each other all the time. Right now, DC has a Supergirl television series on CBS. The CW has Legends of Tomorrow, Arrow, and The Flash.
Now, do those tie into Smallville?
No.
Good.
Constantine is retroactively being pulled into the Flash and Arrow universes, too. They have all these properties, and then they're building these movies. It's separate universes.
Oh. So they're going to have some people perhaps confused when they watch the Flash show and then they see Flash in the movies.
Yeah, actually, Grant Gustin, who plays the Flash on the TV show, went out for the part of the Flash in Zack Snyder's Batman vs. Superman movie, and he didn't get it. And the reason they said is because he wasn't right for the part. Well, he has the part. He's playing the Flash. But yeah, so they're spreading themselves thin like that. They're going to be building these separate universes. There's the CW DC universe, the CBS one with the Supergirl. Now there's the cinematic universe. It's just so much. It's so much, and it just needs to be good.
And that's all. It just needs to be good. Okay, so again, we kind of derailed to what didn't work again.
Oh.
So let me go into what I think did actually work in this film's benefit. I liked a lot of the concepts that were set up. One of the things I've always had issues with Superman is the sort of godlike nature of him. Mm-hmm. I've never liked the character because he's too powerful. It doesn't make any sense to me. Mm-hmm. It's just this character who he changes the balance of power in the entire world just by existing.
Yep.
And I'm like, that's nonsense. I can't empathize whatsoever with this character. You can solve everything. You just solve it unless you have a rock, unless you have the kryptonite.
Here's the thing, though, with Superman. Usually, when he's in a movie or something, they do not put limits on what he can do. They just establish Superman as this kind of godlike character, and they don't cap his abilities at all.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, like you see the same kind of thing in the Flash TV show. The Flash is the fastest man alive. He keeps pushing himself. Like he's gone so fast, he's traveled through time. Now, when you have ridiculous power like that, you're basically God, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop you.
Exactly.
And, like, that's a huge, huge problem with that. But Superman, like, philosophically speaking, is kind of... I think he's supposed to represent an Ubermensch. And what an Ubermensch is, because you're kind of, like, looking like, oh, what is this? Nietzsche introduced the concept... Nietzsche. Yes, that's why you're the smart one.
Well, I know Nietzsche, you know Ubermensch, so...
Right.
There you go.
Okay, so it's the concept of the ideal self, like what humanity should be striving towards.
Yeah.
And Superman is often criticized for being like a schoolboy. Purely good in every single sense of the word. He's also supremely powerful, and he's also an alien. Like, he represents something that everybody wants to be, but he's not of us. Which is a really interesting concept, I think, for Superman, which I wish the movies would address.
Actually, I guess that ties into what I'm saying, is that I feel like this sort of skims the surface of that idea. Of like, okay, he doesn't belong here. He's way more powerful than us. Do we need a Superman? Or is he causing more problems by being here? And I think that's a really cool question to kind of explore. And I feel they started to explore it.
Yeah.
And they didn't really finish with the exploration of that.
Yeah.
But I think like the fact that they tapped into that at all is that feels important to me because that's one of the things that's driven me crazy about Superman is that he's too powerful. To me, it makes the DC universe not make any sense. There's no balance. Nothing. It doesn't work because Superman is so powerful. So for them to kind of tap into that and also like have it so that he can actually there's actually a possibility of him squaring off with Batman. That is what's interesting to me. And which made the Batman versus Superman fight really appealing to me. So like that aspect of the film, like the pitch is like Batman versus Superman, that actually paid off, I feel. But again, there were some other aspects that just didn't pan out the way that I had hoped. I did appreciate the acknowledgement of the destruction of what happened in Man of Steel. One of the things that people had problems with Man of Steel was the fact that Zod and Superman leveled Metropolis. Like there wasn't quite enough emphasis and gravitas added to that for it to have the kind of impact that I think people felt that it required. And I feel like the beginning of this movie kind of helped validate the end of that movie in that you got to see that level of destruction. You got to see it sort of from the ground point of view, like out of the hands of the gods into the common man and their perception of it. Even the common man, even being Bruce Wayne, because he is just a man, even though he's a rich, like super fit superhero.
Yeah,
he is still just a man, and so even seeing the destruction from that point of view of just and also like getting like body counts and stuff like that, I think helped some of the concerns of Man of Steel for me anyway. So I actually really appreciated the level of respect and the level of gravity and weight that was added on to the end of Man of Steel through the beginning of this movie. Like you saw it from the point of view of the people on the ground, and it was horrific destruction. Like if I saw that stuff in real life, that's traumatizing, and it felt really heavy when watching it. So there is that.
That was good. That's kind of a thing that's never really touched on in any kind of superhero media. Like big bad and the big good go at it. Like wreck 3 city blocks, and then the next episode or the next film, like everything's been repaired and nobody says a thing about it.
That's true. Yeah, that's a great point. The thing I can think of that's the closest to it is Iron Man 3 with Tony Stark having PTSD over the events of the Avengers. And I liked that. That was one of my favorite parts of Iron Man 3 was the repercussions. You know, like, hey, it's not easy being a superhero. It can't be easy on the psyche. No. When there's that much just death and destruction around, it weighs on people.
But, you know, we're also very likely going to be getting that in Civil War.
Oh, yeah, probably. There's probably going to be a lot more repercussions. Yeah, again, we can only speculate as what that's going to be like. Do you have anything else to add in the pros of the movie?
Oh, Superman died.
That was a pro?
That was very much a pro.
Oh, okay. I felt like it was a con. I mean, I felt like, okay, I mean, not that I'm against killing Superman. Like, let's kill Superman off. Fine. That's cool. That, again, like, that helps bring balance back to the world.
Yeah.
For me. But it just, by the second movie, I feel like it was another thing that just happened way too fast. Like, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. We're only just exploring the idea of if we should have him around or not, and already we're getting rid of him. I mean, let's face it. He's not gone for good. He's not. They're not going to just ditch their moneymaker that fast.
We'll see.
But I suspect
maybe he's asking for too much money.
He's very good in the interviews. I think he's earning his paychecks.
Oh, okay.
But I doubt. This is me going on record saying I don't think Superman's gone for good.
Oh well, we'll see.
Well, let's talk about Zack Snyder as a director. Because, again, I think part of the controversy is that he's not the director that everyone's sold on. Christopher Nolan was.
Yeah.
And Joss Whedon was.
Yep.
When it was announced that Joss Whedon was taking the Avengers movie, everyone was like, wow, what a good idea. People, they call him Zack the Hack. Zack the Hack Snyder.
Yep.
Now, what are your thoughts of him as a director in general?
Since Watchmen, he's kind of lost his sheen for me. His movies are lacking a lot of substance, I find. Someone else should have done this. Like, you know, give it to Ben Affleck. Like, put him in the director's chair. He can be Batman 2. In fact,
well, he's directing the Batman
movies, yeah. Like, and I'm excited for that. Like, he's a really good director. Argo, so good.
Well, I think even more than Argo was The Town. The Town was really good.
I haven't seen that one just yet, but I don't think I did.
Well, you should check it out.
I definitely should.
Well, Ben Affleck can't direct everything. They are trying to get a lot of like really prestigious directors to direct the DC universe.
Yeah, but Zack Snyder isn't really prestigious. He's kind of like polished, coated steel.
Well,
on top of copper.
Well, Warner Brothers loves him for one reason or another. They keep giving him gigs. Now, here's what I'll say is that I'm kind of on the Zack Snyder train. I didn't see his remake of Dawn of the Dead, but I saw 300 and past that. 300, I'll say he actually added a lot of substance to 300. I don't know if you've ever read the graphic novel.
I haven't yet.
It's stylistically cool, but plot line very flat. He actually added quite a bit to make it a much stronger film than it could have been. So kudos to Zack Snyder for making 300 as good as it was. No offense to Frank Miller, but you know what? It was a cool stylistic comic book. I'm surprised it made as good a movie as it did. Watchmen, a lot of people crap on Watchmen. I actually thought it was a really good adaptation.
I loved Watchmen, yeah. I think for a movie, it's the best one that we could have gotten. The graphic novel is amazing, amazing book.
If it were made now, I think it'd make a really great Netflix series. So yeah, we're both on the board for Watchmen.
Yes.
After that, was that Sucker Punch?
I know it fit in somewhere there, and
Sucker Punch.
So sexist.
Sucker Punch was a mess, and I can't defend it, and I won't because I did not like Sucker Punch at all.
So sexist.
Beyond the sexism, it just didn't really work as a movie. Like it just the ideas didn't tie together, and the narrative was all messed up, and it didn't make any sense.
It kind of looks like a sexually repressed homebody's wet dream.
Now, after that was Man of Steel. And again, like, you and I have different feelings on Man of Steel. I actually felt it was a pretty good Superman film. You felt it was not as much. So, I think neither one of us are really sold 100% on Zack Snyder. What I will say about him is that he is a really great visual director. And he does seem to really care about his source material. And I feel like the flaws of this film aren't necessarily his fault.
But, you know, you could say the exact same thing with Ang Lee, and he has a better track record.
Well, Ang Lee made a horrible Hulk movie.
He made a horrible Hulk movie, but everything else?
We don't have time to get into my thoughts on Ang Lee because I'm not actually a huge Ang Lee fan.
Okay, but he's a very visual, stylistic director, and generally speaking, his movies tend to be, like, plot-wise better.
But he still made that Hulk. So anyway, yes, Ang Lee's movies definitely tend to have more substance than Zack Snyder movies.
Yeah,
they're different kind of directors, and that's fine.
Yeah, it's just one of them is good, and the other one is Zack Snyder.
Well, again, let's be fair to Zack. I don't feel like he's the problem, because I feel like there were similar issues with this movie as there were in Avengers: Age of Ultron. Age of Ultron was a better film.
It was a much better film.
And I'm not going to dispute that, but I do feel like Joss Whedon came across a lot of the same problems. He burnt out with that film. There was a lot of things that were kind of shoehorned in. There was stuff that he had to do because it was Marvel's expectations. Like, you need to check off all these things. You don't have a choice. And he's like, okay, well, I'll just do the best I can. And he's Joss Whedon. He did the best he could, which luckily is pretty good. Zack Snyder is not Joss Whedon.
No.
But I still feel like he had the issues of having to check off a lot of things in a checklist. And the story faltered because of that, not necessarily because of his direction.
I would argue the opposite direction. I would say that, he could have checked the check boxes and done it a lot better.
Yes and no.
As the director, he could have ordered rewrites of the script. He could have given it to...
Well, maybe, but, I mean, the thing is, you're doing a big property for a big studio, and ultimately, a lot of blame falls on the director, but with big studio gigs like this, where there's this much money on the line, it's a studio project. It's not a personal project. Well, it's a studio project.
No.
And they might say, no, here's the script. This is what you're shooting with. He has say in it. I'm sure he does. But I don't know if he has as much control as he would if this were his baby, like Sucker Punch was. So a lot of this is speculative because, I mean, there's probably a lot of bad calls that he made. But I don't want to just blame him because I feel like Warner Brothers has a lot of blame on them as well. Is that fair? I mean, because I've directed. I mean, I haven't directed a big studio picture. Oh God, I would be in a completely different place in life if I had. But I know what the director's job is, and sometimes it's more in the hands of the producer what the final product is like.
Even if they said this is the script, this is what you're doing, he could have shot it, said here you go, and then cut it out all the unnecessary bits. Then we would have had a tighter, shorter movie, and it would have been
He didn't edit it.
well, no, but he would have had his editor. He would have said, okay, now we're making these cuts.
Again, I feel like you're giving him. I mean, he's part of the whole process.
Yes.
But I don't know if he has final say. I just feel like that's more of a executive producer thing.
Okay. Well, let's call Warner Brothers. We'll ask them.
I feel like. But I feel like if there's a lot of negative backlash to him, Warner Brothers is gonna be like, Zack did it, because I feel like that's just they're gonna wash their hands and be like, well, at least we got Affleck for the Batman movie. I don't know. Because I wasn't part of the process at all making this film. I could only speculate. I just feel like let's not just put the blame on Zack Snyder.
Affleck better not screw up Batman. I swear to God.
You're coming from the exact same place of Affleck better not screw up Batman. How much control is he going to have? He's going to make the best he can out of a script that's going to be given to him, and it's going to have been worked on through the studio process, and he's going to direct it, and then it's going to be edited through the studio process. It's a studio picture.
Yeah.
So
okay. So here's a nice little anecdote. Brian De Palma, when he was doing Scarface with Al Pacino, he went and got it rated. Right now, studios really don't like NC-17 ratings because it limits the audience and how they can market it and all that. Studios want an R. If it's going to be that bad, they want an R. Brian De Palma gets the movie rated. Ratings board, the MPAA, comes back with an NC-17 for the sex, the drugs, the swearing, and the swearing, and the swearing, and the drugs, and the drugs, and blah.
Yeah. For all the Scarface-y things.
Right.
Yeah.
So then De Palma challenged the ruling and brought in somebody who worked in ATF, right? Like stopping drug imports and stuff. And they came in, they said, actually, no, this is pretty accurate. You know, this is kind of how it happens. You know, this would be beneficial for an audience to see, to get an idea of like what it can do and, you know, how it works. So then by that point, they demanded that a lot of stuff be cut, and he resubmitted it, and they said, no, this is still an NC-17. So once they approved it, he went back and he put everything that he wanted originally back into the movie and just released that with an R rating. And you know, it was still like a big movie. It was, you need to do these things to get this rating. Do it now. He worked around the system to make a better movie.
Well, okay. I mean, but that's A, Brian De Palma in his heyday. And B, a different...
So this isn't Zack Snyder's heyday?
Well, hear me out. And B, a different era in cinema and a different kind of property. There's so much I don't know. So I'm not going to say you're wrong. I'm sure he fought tooth and nail to make the film what it is. All I'm saying is I just don't know how much control he had, and we should cut him a little slack. Because I do know Zack Snyder has some good films in him.
Maybe one, maybe two.
Well, I know of at least two.
Yeah.
I hear it's a pretty good remake of Dawn of the Dead, and I want to watch it. Let's talk about what would have been a better build-up to this Justice League introduction. So let's say we start with Man of Steel. That's still our starting point. Let's say we got 3 movies to get to Batman vs. Superman. What would those 3 movies be?
First one after Man of Steel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So after Man of Steel, we would do, I think, Man of Steel 2. And I would suggest Superman versus Metallo.
See, I think that we should go with a different hero. I think Man of Steel 2 should be the next one in. Kind of like, you know, how Iron Man 2... was spaced out after Incredible Hulk.
Well, the way that I'm like kind of plotting it out in my head, there's some things that need to be established and introduced about Superman before we can really build any more, I think. So like the reason that I'm saying Man of Steel 2 should be next, and you know, assuming we're building up to the Justice League and not doing what happened, it should be Man of Steel 2, and the bad guy should be Metallo, because it would introduce Kryptonite. It would introduce Lex Luthor. It would.
I have a question. Who's Metallo?
Oh, so in the comics, what happened is Lex Luthor said, "You know who I really want to kill? This Superman guy." So he got Dude. I can't remember his name, but
Dude. Okay.
Well, yeah, we'll call him a Dude.
He turns into Metallo.
Yeah. Okay. So like he gets this guy, and he basically makes him a cyborg. Now the cyborg is powered by kryptonite, so he has super strength and like all these stuff. Plus he opens up his chest, or like he gets punched hard enough where there's a hole, and boom, there's an arc reactor thing of kryptonite there.
And then that's Superman's weakness.
Yeah.
La-di-da-di-da. Okay.
Yeah, okay. So it would establish Lex Luthor as a major antagonist in Superman. It would establish Kryptonite as his weakness. And also introduce, like, it has all these properties and it can be used for power sources and stuff like that. So that would be an important thing to establish. Plus, while doing all that, we can have Lois Lane. Well, you can build on the relationship. They can, like, fall in love and... Like,
I mean, apparently they're living together, and so it'd be good to see that lead up to that.
Yeah. So we would get to build on that, too, and it would be short and it would be concise, and it would be a, really cool fight, because Superman would need to be like, well, now I know I have a weakness, how do I stop this?
Okay. So I think that it should have been Batman next, is to bring in another Batman movie. I know it seems like it wasn't that long since... Dark Knight Rises, but you know what? We're coming out with another Spider-Man movie right out on the heels of another Spider-Man movie that was on the heels of another Spider-Man movie. So, you know what? People they'll roll with it. And I feel like that should have dealt with the repercussions of the events of Man of Steel and sort of like this resurgence of Batman. Like, because again, we don't need an origin story, but it would be nice to have another story about how he's sort of like resurfacing as the Dark Knight, and then we can get more of the backstory of like Jason Todd and some plot maybe even connected with the destruction of Metropolis. Like maybe there's businessmen profiting off of that event, like the Penguin is a notorious shady businessman. Yes, like something like that. Like just reestablish the Batman, establish him for who he is in this universe, and give him his own movie before we could put him up against Superman. In that, we can build up the fact that Batman and Superman are now in the same universe, and build up that Batman has a growing resentment towards what Superman represents and how he's been fighting crime for 20 years in Gotham, and Superman just kind of shows up and is now this high and mighty like power that puts fear into crime and stuff like that. Like I feel like we could use more establishment of Batman as he fits in this universe.
The reason you can do Man of Steel 2 first is you can do those events, you can establish those things that need to be established for Batman versus Superman. Then after that, you can do a Batman movie that can be a prequel to Man of Steel 1. And then you have Batman doing his thing in Gotham, and then at the very end, on the television, Metropolis is falling.
Maybe, or maybe during the events of Man of Steel. Like, maybe they overlap. I don't know if a prequel would be the best way to go about it, because then I feel like you're dodging origin story stuff. I don't know. We may have to agree to disagree on the placement of Man of Steel 2 versus Batman.
Okay.
But we know that one should be in spot A, one should be in spot B.
Yeah.
What should be in spot C?
I think it should be Batman, and it should be...
You want another Batman movie?
Yeah.
So you want 2 Batman movies before Batman vs. Superman?
Yeah.
What about all the other Justice League characters?
Well, no. So the reason I would do it as Man of Steel 2, Batman is in the second Batman, he's noticed Superman, realized that he could be a very big threat, and now is preparing to do away with him.
You want a whole movie of him preparing to take on Superman?
No, it can be Batman versus the Penguin, Batman versus the Riddler, or Batman versus Lex Luthor. And the reason that he would be taking on one of these characters is they would have something that he needs in order to take down Superman. So he's preparing to take Superman on, and as he's doing this, he's come across this conflict with whoever it is, and he realizes, like, okay, we need to shelve my Superman plan for a second, take this on. And as he finishes that, now he has everything he needs. And then we can go right into Batman versus Superman and have it about that conflict.
You know, the more I think about it, the more I think that maybe spot C, is for me anyway, should be Batman versus Superman. So we have Man of Steel, and this is my head, Man of Steel, Batman, Man of Steel 2, then Batman versus Superman. And then I feel like the placement of Wonder Woman, as it is now, where she is introduced in Batman vs. Superman, then I feel like it could work. Then you don't have to worry about the fact that you're having to reintroduce Superman and then also introduce Wonder Woman. Then there's a level of sincere, earned excitement when she appears on screen. Then you're suddenly getting the sense of like, oh, this is building up to be a much bigger universe than just Batman and Superman.
Yeah, I would put Wonder Woman and whispers of other eventual Justice Leaguers into my Batman sequel.
I think I'd sprinkle them kind of throughout the other 2 movies myself, but just sprinkled. But yeah, then I feel like it's kind of earned. So I feel like there should have been at least 2 movies between Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman. And you feel like definitely 3 movies between?
Yeah.
And you want two Batman and another Superman movie?
Yes.
Now here's one thing you got to consider, is that when you have a property like Batman and then Superman, is that those take years to make. What Marvel did in this few years, they were able to space out a lot of films.
Yep.
Because they went with different properties.
Yes. The thing, though, is that Batman primarily, despite being amazing at everything, because he's primarily a detective. So in his movies, you can do quite a lot with just him, like, being a detective and figuring these things out.
It's still going to take time to get from scripts to finished product.
Well, yeah.
Like, it's still going to take years.
Yeah.
Like, that's just a fact of filmmaking.
Well, yeah, but, like...
Especially with big-budget pictures.
But even still, like, all the whispers and, like, all the, like, little nods and stuff, where things are slowly being brought in, you can throw those into the Batman movies because he's a detective and he would naturally be finding these things out through his investigation of other things. Because, like, you would need to make it interconnected.
I don't think you're getting the point of what I'm saying. I'm saying that in order to do Superman, Batman, you're looking at least a couple years between those two Superman movies. At least a couple years between those Batman movies. And then plus a couple years to make Batman vs. Superman. You're looking at a very big long-term investment.
You know, if I was a bigwig at Warner or DC or one of the two, I would say, like, okay, let's bring the CW shows, Flash and Arrow, into the fold, and, you know, we'll sprinkle stuff in the movies in them, and people be able to follow along and, like, have stuff.
But what about people like me who just don't want to watch the Flash and just don't want to watch Arrow?
Well, then stop doing that and come on, join the rest of us and torture yourself.
Anyway, all I'm saying is that what Marvel did was that they had different properties that they built on.
Yeah.
And they were able to do that because they could work on them at similar times. They could space them out because they had different directors, different actors, and they could churn them out much faster than they could if they just made Iron Man, then Iron Man 2, then Iron Man 3, and then the...
Well, no, like, but a point here, I thought, was leading up to Batman versus Superman, which would then lead into the Justice League. You know, the Justice League from there would lead out into the other movies. Like, the point is to set Batman versus Superman to be a cleaner, more concise, better put together film.
Yes.
Right? And the way that you do that is you build up Batman and Superman.
Yeah, and I'm saying that with your order and the way that you and the way that you have things spaced out, you're asking for a much bigger amount of time than if you're to space things out differently. In my order of, like, Superman, then Batman, then another Superman, and then Batman versus Superman, I feel like that seems like something that I feel like a studio could commit to. Where I think that the way you're talking about it, I think a studio would look at that and go, like, who's going to stick around for this?
Okay. Then, here, let me revamp it. You do Man of Steel, then Man of Steel 2, Batman, and then Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice.
Okay. Maybe could work. We are running out of time. Is there anything else that you feel...
Bechdel test and Makomori test?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say that, in all things considered with Lois, completely failed.
Yeah, I don't think it succeeds in the Bechdel.
No.
I do think that it succeeds in the Makomori test. Not through Lois Lane, but I think through Wonder Woman.
Yeah, no.
So she's got her own agenda. She's not a huge player, but she does have her own personality, her own sort of arc. And a lot of the arc is secret, so I don't know how much it succeeds, but I do feel like it does succeed. But, unfortunately, I think that is just a byproduct of the fact that it's borrowing from material that
has a long history of sexism.
It does. Wonder Woman, generally speaking, is sort of the female character and sort of like the exception to a lot of the rules. But yeah, so it's kind of hard to work in a lot of feminism into comic book films. This one at least tried to make Lois Lane important. And it did introduce Wonder Woman. For the first time, Wonder Woman on the big screen.
Yes.
So let's give credit where credit's due. It does succeed, I think, in bringing in stronger female characters into comic book films. So...
I'm giving a round of applause.
So Marvel, it looks like they're going to release a Wonder Woman film before...
Captain Marvel. Apparently there's no Black Widow.
Black Widow is what I was going to say.
Yeah, but
Captain Marvel is happening.
Captain Marvel is happening. I don't think Black Widow is.
We do see a lot of Black Widow, at least.
Yeah.
But anyway, I hope that this has been an entertaining and insightful look into Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. I hope that we can all look at this film in a well-balanced way and not just crap on it because everyone's crapping on it. Let's try and be fair.
Despite it being so bad. Yeah.
Well, can't please everyone, especially not Mason once he's made up his mind. But yeah, I don't know. I think we covered a lot of interesting points. We are moving on.